In an interview I did with him on Friday, India's Defence Minister Arun Jaitley had confidently asserted that China shouldn't try and intimidate Delhi because this is not the India of 1962. Today, the Chinese Foreign Ministry hit back, telling India that this is not the China of 1962 either. This kind of language hasn't been seen from Beijing in the last several years. This is being called the sharpest escalation since 1962. India Today is the only news channel to be reporting on this story from the ground. Anant Krishnan in Beijing, Gaurav Sawant from the Nathula Pass in the eastern sector, and Geeta Mohan from Bhutan file this India Today exclusive.
To travel our area. Yeah.
This is not your.
This is not your area.
No.
This is our area.
This is our area. And you are doing recce, patrolling your area. So many people, only 10 people can do. 10 people can do recce. 10 people can do patrolling.
Why so many? Why so many?
Not so many soldiers.
An open verbal duel.
Commander, the line is very clear.
It's not clear. It's clear.
Yeah.
You are crossed.
This is Indian territory. You are in Indian territory.
Listen.
Are soldiers confronting the Chinese army?
No road. So you making road at 30R. You making road.
This video from 2015 is yet another proof of China's dirty tricks, of how the dragon has always wanted to sneak in to others' territory.
You know good people. House.
In 2015, it was a verbal argument. In 2017, our soldiers were left with no option but to jostle, to literally push back Chinese soldiers. And while the tensions at the Indo-China border are far from easing down, Beijing has simply refused to back down on Doklam Plateau.
उनका जो मकसद है, हमको लग रहा है कि इंडिया पर प्रेशर डालने के लिए कि किसी तरह से भी ये जितना भी बॉर्डर एरिया है, इस बॉर्डर एरिया को सेटल करने के लिए जल्द से जल्द वो लोग भी चाहते होंगे.
They speak of how China continues with its aggression at the border. They do not come with the required and requisite number of officials or jawans who need to come for patrolling. They come in huge numbers.
Not just this, China is slowly turning the entire standoff to a diplomatic face-off. On 30th of June, Defence Minister Arun Jaitley had asserted that the India of 2017 is different from what it was in 1962.
हम तैयार हैं 1962 की वो याद दिला रहे हैं.
देखिए, मैं इसके याद दिलाना है तो वो 62 की स्थिति अलग थी, 2017 का भारत और है.
Responding to this, China's foreign ministry said that even China is not the same as it was way back in 1962. China has said that the India-China-Bhutan tri-junction lies at Mount Gipmochi, while India and Bhutan say that the tri-junction lies far south. And it is in this region that China is constructing the road, triggering opposition from both India and Bhutan.
It is quite sad that these two big leaders of Asia can't come together and engage in each other and solve problems to have a much more open, optimistic future for the whole region.
While China continues its lies and more skeletons continue to tumble out of its closet, India has made it clear there will be no giving in.
No. This is our area. And
Responding very strongly to Defence Minister Arun Jaitley's statement on 1962, China said if India is different from 1962, so is China. Beijing stepping up its rhetoric aimed at India and saying that India was interfering in a China-Bhutan dispute. Beijing also referring to Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, saying that he had recognized China's claims on Sikkim, even if Beijing ignored Nehru's position on Aksai Chin and the McMahon Line. Reporting for India Today in Beijing, this is Anand Krishnan.
Jibe versus jibe, eyeball to eyeball. This is being described as one of the worst standoffs since 1962. How will this end? The dragon and the elephant, eyeball to eyeball in Bhutanese territory. Joining us now, Gaurav Sawant, our Executive Editor for Strategic Affairs. He's just come back from Nathula, was with the Indian Army, understanding preparations on the ground, looking at what's happening. Also with us from Beijing is Anand Krishnan, the Foreign Ministry in China, upping the ante. Remember, Arun Jaitley spoke to India today, said that this is not the India of 1962. The Foreign Ministry spokesperson in Beijing today saying this is not the China of 1962 either. Also with us live from Bhutan tonight, Geeta Mohan, our Foreign Affairs Editor. I want to go to Gaurav first. Gaurav, you've been speaking to forces on the ground. Access was restricted. You weren't allowed to shoot very much, but you went up to Nathula. You spoke to all the powers that be in India's Eastern Command. What did they have to tell you? What are they making of this eyeball-to-eyeball confrontation with China?
They're very resolute, they're very firm, and they know what they're doing is right. They came to Bhutan's assistance. The area that we're talking about, Rahul, extremely significant. This Doklam Plateau belongs to Bhutan. That's very clear. China disputes that. But there are no Chinese posts in that area. There are no Chinese bunkers in that area. Chinese came with earth movers, and the images that China released, my sources in the Eastern Command tell me that those were Chinese earth movers that they were trying to palm off or show as Indian earth movers. So on the 16th, when the Chinese came there, on the 16th of June, the Bhutanese army tried to stop them. The Indian army came to their assistance because the Bhutanese army was outnumbered by the Chinese troops. So the eyeball to eyeball
there right now?
Eyeball to eyeball continues, Rahul, even today. But tension is not as high as it was on day one. So no jostling, but eyeball to eyeball remains. Numbers have been strengthened on all sides. Backups are already there. But there is no movement, so to say. And, you know, the artillery there has a saying that we are always high and forever here to stay. That feeling is there in the army. We are here. We are very confident.
Anand Krishnan, what do you make of the spokesperson's response? There was commentary in the state media in Beijing, very, very provocative, saying this is not the China of 1962. They also spoke of defending China in all situations, including war, saying that even at the cost of war, we are ready, we will resolutely safeguard border sovereignty. What is Beijing making of this confrontation, and why are they upping the ante the way they are?
Well, Rahul, frankly, it's quite unprecedented. I mean, it's been 11 days and more than a dozen statements from the Foreign Ministry, from the PLA, and in language that they really haven't used on India, at least in the last 7-8 years that I've been here. So it's something that's quite unprecedented. And what the Chinese have been saying publicly is that they're playing down the Bhutan angle and Bhutan's concerns as well. And they're trying to paint India as a villain of the peace, saying time and again that it was India that violated international law and crossed the border into Bhutanese territory, which China claims. So China is really pressuring India, it seems, and playing down what are legitimate concerns, not just of India and Bhutan as well, in what they've been doing, this unprecedented propaganda push over the last now 11 days, in fact.
Okay, Geeta Mohan has been in Bhutan for several days now. Geeta, describe what's been happening. You've been speaking to officials in the Bhutanese establishment. What are they telling you? What's happening on the ground, and what is Bhutan making of this eyeball-to-eyeball confrontation between India and China?
Well, right now, Rahul, the administration has absolutely clammed up because they are trying to toe a very cautious line. They are sandwiched between two Asian giants, but there is a reason why there is a bilateral agreement between India and Bhutan, Rahul, on military support and assistance. That's because of the massive trust factor between India and Bhutan and the massive distrust between China and Bhutan. The fact that Bhutan does not trust China in ensuring that Bhutan gets its own space is the reason why it always looks at India for support if in case there is any transgression from the Chinese side. The Bhutanese army at the border, Rahul, are not armed. They're just men standing at the border, manning the border only to ensure there are no transgressions. If there are transgressions, they report it back to headquarters and seek help from the Indian side. That's how aware Bhutan is of the fact that they are a small country and they are between two big countries who are always and constantly in conflict, but doesn't take away from the fact that the trust issue is massive, and Doklam Plateau, like Gaurav was saying, Rahul, is crucial, not just for India because it looks into the chicken's neck in Siliguri that could really cut off the whole of northeast or mainland India. It is because of the communication network of Bhutan that goes through Siliguri, the entire data network, the optical fibers go through Siliguri, and if in case the Doklam Plateau ever gets into Chinese hands, Bhutan's communications would be in dire threat.
Thank you very much, Geeta Mohan, for joining us from Bhutan. I want to introduce our guest this evening. Brahma Chelani is one of India's foremost voices on China. General Shankar Prasad is former Director General of the Indian Infantry. B.R. Deepak is a professor of Chinese studies. He's at the Center for Chinese and Southeast Asian Studies. I want to go across to Brahma Chelani first because you understand the mind of Beijing. What's going on in the mind of the powers that be in Beijing? They're upping the ante. Anand Krishnan says he's been there for 7 odd years. He hasn't heard representatives of the foreign ministry use the kind of language they are. What's going on, Brahma?
The real issue is between China and Bhutan, between Asia's colossus versus a teeming state, a state that only has a population of 750,000 people. To divert attention from this angle, the fact that China has committed aggression against a tiny state, Beijing is trying to put the focus on India. It's trying to make India the aggressor. And unfortunately, because of intense propaganda coming out of Beijing, and the Indian media has been awash in Chinese propaganda for days. Only last Friday, when the Indian government really spoke up after a gap of over 4 days, did the Indian version come out in the Indian press. So for days, the Chinese were feeding their propaganda, trying to paint India as the aggressor, but avoiding any reference to Bhutan. Only after the Bhutanese ambassador in New Delhi
Mr. Prasad, what do you think is going on? What are you making of this provocation and the fact that Beijing is upping the ante, talking about at all costs, including war, we will defend our sovereignty, saying this is not the China of 1962, they're trying to intimidate, they're trying to bully. How will this end and what's going on in your mind?
Well, let me tell you in the beginning that the situation is getting more difficult and graver by the day. And I think it's a great game of brinkmanship that's going on at the moment. Considering the kind of internal security situation that we have in our country today, with all political parties going in different directions, and also a large number of world powers now supporting Indian cause, there is a certain amount of anxiety in China, particularly with our growing relationship with America. I will not go more into detail of the strategic issues at the moment, but the current issue is about the tactical deployment by both sides. For China to say that China is not of 1962 is correct. And so is it correct for India to say we are not an army or a nation of 1962. Both nations have grown in every sphere. Now the concept of warfare between the two countries has completely changed. If we think that what happened in 1962, a wave of Chinese coming and attacking our positions, that's not going to happen. We have all read the 9th white paper issued by China on their new tactics, the new doctrines of small party operations supported by helicopters, supported by air, etc., which I don't want to go into details, but we are all aware of the new Chinese tactics and new manner of confronting a position like India. And similarly, India has developed its own self. Before I go any further, let me make one statement very clear, that unlike what we had in 1962, today our positions, particularly in Sikkim, Bhutan, in that area of tri-junction, are far, far more stronger than what they ever could have been. Today our positions there are tactically superior. We are better armed, better equipped, better
this
poised
whole business
tactically.
of saber-rattling in the way that we've seen
all of it is in our
has
favor.
happened between India and Pakistan. You know, the Pakistani army chief has often spoken this language. Now we are seeing the Chinese foreign ministry issue the kind of threats that we haven't seen them issue for several years. We're also seeing how they believe India is somehow responsible, how India was the original guilty party in this, whereas any literature from that area shows these have never been Chinese positions. Yes. China suddenly wakes up one fine day and says this used to be part of ancient China. You know, that makes no sense. What do you think the dragon's up to?
Yeah, Rahul, you are addressing the question to me.
I am.
Yeah, I think, you know, first of all, I wish that, you know, both the sides, China also and India also, they tone down the rhetoric and warmongering. The situation at the border is extremely volatile. You know, it may not look that volatile, but we know that it is psychological warfare. You know. And secondly, why it is so, I think China has been increasingly, you know, frustrated because of India's posturing, especially in Asia and beyond, you know, because the kind of defragmented integration China sees in South Asia, they see that this is an opportune time to make their forays in India's vicinity and beyond. And India not being part of their initiative, for example.
So are you saying, Professor Deepak, that they're trying to bully us into joining the One Belt, One Road because India took an independent position, refused to join this One Belt, One Road project, and therefore they're somehow trying to intimidate us? Is that what's going on?
No, that is just, you know, you can say one argument, you know. There are many. For example, in terms of, you know, they trying to secure a boundary settlement with Bhutan, so they're not been able to, you know, even if, according to the Chinese reports, so they have been exchanging, you know, 600 square kilometers in the eastern, in the western Bhutan for almost, you know, 3,600 or 900 square kilometers in the western and eastern and northern Bhutan, and the elephant in the room, of course, it is India, you know, and this is one frustration. So they would like to declare India the third party, but I think I would argue that both the country, India and China, so they need to take the perceptions of each other into account. For India,
Prasad,
we also need to,
Professor
take
Deepak
into
says
account
this is somehow Chinese frustration, Chinese angst with the fact that China has this grand Asian hegemony plan, India somehow trying to stand as a counter, and they don't seem to be very happy with that.
See, let's say, I want to use three terms. There is a geostrategic problem, there is a geographical problem, and there's an economic problem. The main issue today is this, that the Chinese are not liking India developing the way it is. It is becoming an important superpower, if I may call it, in the field of economy. We have got a great amount of international support with the Prime Minister visiting all the world capitals, and every single world power is in support of India. India, actually, one more serious issue is about the issue of Pakistan. One road, OBOR and China economic corridor between China and Pakistan are two important issues. Nevertheless, what is really troubling Pakistan and China is our intentions to finish terrorism. And therefore, Chinese need to come into this picture to try and prevent us from taking anything against Pakistan. The one thing is very clear at the moment, and that is known to the entire world and to the Chinese and to the US, that while we have support of all the world powers in the geostrategic field, we have to do our own capability building.
Okay, stay with me, General Prasad. In the midst of all of this, Indian satellites and Indian maritime reconnaissance aircraft have picked up reports of China deploying additional submarines in the vicinity of India, in the Indian Ocean region. Sudhiranjan Sen files this story about how increased activity is now being seen in the midst of this fortnight-long standoff with China in Bhutan. Here's the story in an India Today exclusive.
This lurking submarine is not just another mean war machine. This is the Yuan-class conventional diesel-electric submarine deployed by Beijing in the Indian Ocean region. The 7th such submarine to be spotted since tensions escalated with China. The Indian Navy has underlined the heightened Chinese People Liberation's Navy activity in the Indian Ocean region to South Block. Chinese warships and submarines in the Indian Ocean region appeared 3 years ago in 2013-14, ostensibly for anti-piracy operations in the Gulf of Aden. But from a modest beginning of a flotilla of just 3 warships, 2 destroyers and a support ship in 2013-14, more and more Chinese warships are now prowling in the waters around India.
Recently, Indian satellites and long-range maritime surveillance platforms of the Indian Navy picked up as many as 14 warships of the Chinese military in the Indian Ocean region. These include the latest Luang 3 or the Kunming class. And what is worse, along with them, there are several spy ships that are also moving around.
The silver lining, the Indian Navy is tracking every move of the Chinese Navy using satellites and long-range surveillance platforms like the US-made P-8 Eyes. The Indian Navy has been watching and recording movements of the Chinese Navy in the Indian Ocean region. The first Chinese nuclear submarine was picked up in December 2013. The Shang class, a nuclear-propelled submarine, was deployed for almost 3 months in the waters around India till February 2014. It was followed by Song class diesel-electric submarine for another 3 months between August and December 2014. The Song class followed by another nuclear vessel, a Han class nuclear submarine. Last year, China deployed a nuclear submarine, a Han class nuclear submarine and a conventional submarine respectively. These submarines snooped around the Indian Ocean for over 6 months. Top sources have told India Today that a Chinese naval spy ship entered the Indian Ocean this month. The spy ship, equipped with sophisticated equipment, is deployed to collect electronic intelligence, among other things. It is capable of honing on electronic signals that can be returned to China for analysis. Is there a connection between the Doklam standoff and the deployment of Chinese submarines in the Indian Ocean? At the face of it, the 2 incidents aren't connected. But Beijing ensnaring India in the Indian Ocean has set off alarm bells beyond just the high seas. With Sudhiranjan Sen in Delhi, Bureau Report, India Today.
So in India Today, exclusive report there. Sudhiranjan Sen now joins us. Sudhi, what's the message Beijing is trying to send through this increased submarine activity in the Indian Ocean region?
Well, the number one clear message is that we are the dominant power. We are projecting our force far beyond our shores, and we have the capability. Mind you, they have many number of submarines, and the number of ships that they have far outnumber us. They're just below the United States. And they are building, and the number of ships and submarines are only going to add on. What you saw in 2013-14 were small flotillas of ships of 3, 2 coming into this area. Now, Indian Navy satellites are picking up as many as, say, about 13 to 14 ships. And interestingly, many of these are spy ships. They are mapping the Indian Ocean region, picking up the bathymetric data, which is very, very critical for submarine operations once again. So their intention is very clear.
So you've got spy ships coming in, you've got submarines coming in, Brahma, you've got a face-off between India and China and Bhutan, and you've got action also in the Indian Ocean region. Is this part of the same grand strategy, you think, on the part of Beijing?
Beijing is clearly trying to fashion a Sino-centric Asia, and India is one of the major obstacles that China faces in realizing that vision of a China-centric Asia. The fact is that China is mounting pressure on India from different fronts. In fact, India feels completely encircled now. And India has to develop a strategy which blends different elements, economic, diplomatic, political, military elements, in a coherent strategy to tackle China. Right now, we are not having this kind of a holistic, integrated approach to dealing with China.
Ranade, what are you making of this? Action, face-off in Bhutan, also movement of submarines, spy ships in the Indian Ocean region. Is this linked to China's frustration and India's stonewalling the One Belt, One Road project?
Well, I would not so readily link the maritime activity with what is going on in Bhutan. The maritime activity represents a much larger game plan by China to extend its interests across the Indian Ocean up to the Atlantic and into the South China Sea, which it regards as a continuum, and that's what it's doing. As far as Bhutan is concerned, it's a direct pressure on us. It is part of their operations to put India under pressure and extend the tri-junction up to what they consider the tri-junction, which is Gemen-Chong in the southern tip, much further south than Batangla, which we insist is the tri-junction, in order to reinforce their claim on Arunachal Pradesh. So I think it's a larger game plan that the Chinese are trying, but maybe this time by doing the road bending activity, they probably didn't anticipate India's response and could possibly have bitten off more than they could chew.
General Prasad, in conclusion, this is a whole new approach. You know, usually our approach to China has been marked with a lot of timidity. Now suddenly you've got a far more assertive approach to China, and the one question frankly that everybody has, you know, while we heard Jaitley, you know, I did that interview and Arun Jaitley said this is not the India of 1962. Militarily, they're far superior in terms of the sheer number of weapons they have, the kind of defense budget they have. Of course we will fight, and we will fight at all costs. The question is, you know, is this really in India's best interest to be as assertive? That's a question several people who've been watching this story have been sending to us.
Well, indeed, we have to be strong and we have to show our strength. Remember, there is a policy of China to put a necklace of pearls around us, and this is visible now. The Navy is showing itself, the Army is showing itself in Bhutan, and soon maybe some Air Force sorties will also go. There is the issue of cyber warfare today. There is the issue of space management today. You know, the kind of satellite imagery that is available today, nothing can be hidden. All of us know that. There is also the serious American angle of the American Armada in the same waters in South China Sea. So while OBOR is one issue, there are several other issues that are going. And the international position today is so complex. There is Russia, there is America, there is economic issues between America and China, there is economic issues between us and China, there is the American interest in Pakistan, there is the Chinese interest in Pakistan, there is the issue of our own safeguarding our borders. So these are very complex issues, but the current situation in Bhutan needs to be handled with great amount of maturity. We need to see that it doesn't go out of hand. It's neither good for Pakistan, for China, nor good for us. But at the same time, I'd like to conclude by saying, let nobody think that we are the India of 1962. We are a far superior
your thoughts in conclusion,
today,
how should India play it? You've got jibe versus jibe, eyeball to eyeball, two big armies locked in confrontation. How take it from here? How can this matter resolve itself? What would you be doing?
Two quick points, Rahul. One, a reference to a comment that you made, that you're getting a lot of people who are saying that India should not allow this to escalate, and is this in India's best interest? That is exactly what Beijing is banking on. Their assessments are that India and its leadership doesn't have the political courage to stand up to China. So I think our response this time has put paid to that. Secondly, I think what we are doing is absolutely correct. We are standing firm. We are showing that we will not yield as far as matters of sovereignty and territorial interest are concerned, and at the same time we are taking care not to escalate the situation and trying to pursue diplomatic contacts in order to diffuse the situation. I think that is what we need to do. That is what we are doing.
Okay, I'm going to leave it over there. To all our guests, Professor Deepak, General Shankar Prasad, Brahma Chalani, Jaydev Ranade, for joining us. Thank you very much. Thanks also to Sudhi for breaking that story. Eyeball to eyeball confrontation, but the only way to deal with the bully is to stand up to him. Don't let matters unnecessarily escalate beyond a point where it becomes too much of a confrontation, but you can't cow down, because that is exactly what Beijing.
बहुत सारे व्यापारी बड़े परेशान हैं कंप्लायंस को लेके। वो कहते हैं कि अब हर महीने 3 दफा और हर साल में 37 दफा आपको रिटर्न भरना पड़ेगा।
देखिए, आप अपनी पहली रिटर्न भरेंगे तो जो आपकी रिटर्न है और जो आपको सप्लाई कर रहे हैं सामान वगैरह, उसके साथ जो मैच होगा, जो सेकंड और थर्ड रिटर्न है वो कंप्यूटर में सेल्फ जनरेट होती है, वो आपको नहीं भरनी है। वो कंप्यूटर की सेल्फ जनरेटेड रिटर्न को एक जबरदस्ती तर्क देने के लिए आप कह दो वो सेकंड और थर्ड हो गई, वो तो सॉफ्टवेयर जनरेटेड रिटर्न है। तो इसलिए एक रिटर्न आपको भरनी है, इसमें आपको कोई तकलीफ नहीं है। आप इसका तुलना कीजिए, मैं आपको एक दूसरा उदाहरण दे रहा हूं। आज आप 17 तरह के इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेस हैं, आप हर एक की रिटर्न फाइल करते हो, हर एक के लिए अपने कंसल्टेंट या चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट पे जाते हो। आपका सामान एक राज्य से दूसरे राज्य पे जाता है, ट्रक दिनों दिन तक खड़े रहते हैं, हर राज्य में रेट अलग अलग होता है। एक स्थान पर स्टेज पर जो पहले टैक्स दिया है, दूसरे स्टेज पे उस पर दोबारा टैक्स दोगे तो कीमत भी उससे बढ़ती है। उसके बाद जब अपनी असेसमेंट फिजिकली करवाने जाते हो तो वो भ्रष्टाचार का एक साधन, हैरेसमेंट का साधन बन जाता है। आज का जो कंप्लायंस बर्डन है, मल्टीपल टैक्सेस, मल्टीपल इंटरफेस, मल्टीपल पेपर वर्क, हायर कॉस्ट और कमोडिटीज की कीमत भी ज्यादा है और ट्रांजैक्शन अपने आप में मुश्किल है। इसके स्थान पर हर महीने आप एक अपनी एंट्री कर दीजिए और जो बिजनेस टू बिजनेस सप्लाई कर रहा है वो डिटेल देगा कि मैंने किस किस को सप्लाईज किए हैं सॉफ्टवेयर पे। आप अब एक टैक्स है, एक रिटर्न है, एक इंटरफेस है और उसको आपको किसी व्यक्ति को जाकर कागज पे नहीं देना, अपने सॉफ्टवेयर में डालना है। तो आज भी आप कंसल्टेंट्स को हायर करते हो, स्वयं नहीं चला सकते तो उसको आप उसके अंदर डाल दो। इसमें तकलीफ सिर्फ एक है और वो एक तकलीफ है कि पुरानी व्यवस्था में इवेजन की गुंजाइश बहुत ज्यादा थी, इसमें इवेजन की गुंजाइश बहुत कम है।
देश भर में कारोबारियों की हड़ताल चल रही है। आप कह रहे हैं कि सब सरल है, लेकिन जिन लोगों को इसको इंप्लीमेंट करना है उनकी राय आपकी राय से जुदा है।
ऐसा है कि मैंने आपको तकलीफ, इसके एडवांटेजेस कितने हैं, इसके वेबसाइट को कितने एडवांटेज हैं, ट्रेडर को कितने एडवांटेज हैं, मैन्युफैक्चरर को कितने एडवांटेज हैं, कि आपको जाकर 17 अथॉरिटीज के पास अब नहीं जाना है, एक सॉफ्टवेयर में रिटर्न डालनी है। लेकिन बहुत बड़ा एक वर्ग ऐसा है, बहुत बड़ा, जो इसका खूब स्वागत कर रहा है। एक छोटा वर्ग ऐसा भी है जिसको लगता है कि चाहे रेट कोई बड़ा नहीं है, लेकिन पहले रेट की गुंजाइश नहीं थी, एक एड्रेस पे 6 कंपनी भी चल जाती थी टैक्स इवेजन की दृष्टि से, अब उसमें थोड़ी कठिनाई आएगी। तो इसलिए मुझे लगता है कि लोगों को, मैं आपको छोटा सा एग्जांपल दूं। इस साल के एक बार बहुत साल पहले राष्ट्रपति जी जब फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर थे तो उन्होंने 1% एक्साइज लगाया गोल्ड पे। सारे ज्वेलरी ट्रेड ने विरोध किया, उन्होंने वापस ले लिया। चिदम्बरम साहब ने 1% लगाया, उन्होंने विरोध किया, उन्होंने वापस ले लिया। इस बार हमने भी 1% लगाया। अब लग्जरी गुड पे 1% जो कि कस्टमर को देना है, आपको नहीं देना, कितना बड़ा विरोध हुआ, हमने वापस नहीं लिया। अब जीएसटीएन हमने 3% लगा दिया, जीएसटी। तो 1% का विरोध करने वाला ट्रेड अब 3% पे स्वागत का उन्होंने बयान दे दिया, क्योंकि एक बार अभ्यास हो गया कि अब आपको सिस्टम के अंदर आना है। तो जो सिस्टम के बाहर ऑपरेट हो रहे थे अब सिस्टम के अंदर आएंगे तो थोड़ी उथल पुथल तो उससे होगी।
पर हमने सर डिमोनेटाइजेशन के वक्त देखा कि सरकार ने डिमोनेटाइजेशन की अनाउंसमेंट की और खूब सारे जुगाड़ ऑपरेटर्स लग गए आपके एक्सपेरिमेंट को विफल बनाने में, उसमें किसी तरीके से अपना वो काम निकाल लिया, इसमें लग गए। जुगाड़ ऑपरेटर्स के खिलाफ आपकी क्या तैयारी है? जुगाड़ जीतेगा या जीएसटी?
देखिए, मुझे लगता है कि किसी भी सिस्टम में वायलेट करने वाले रहेंगे, लेकिन अगर एफिशिएंट सिस्टम होता है तो उसमें रिस्क बहुत ज्यादा होती है। अब आज भी इतना कड़ा कानून बनने के बाद भी कि आप विदेश में पैसा नहीं रख सकते, लोगों कुछ ऐसे होंगे जो ऑफेंड करके रख रहे होंगे, लेकिन जब पकड़ा जाएगा तो फिर उसको उसका परिणाम भुगतने पड़ेंगे। तो मैं मानता हूं कि ये वो व्यवस्था है जो इस देश के ट्रेड ने, व्यवसाय ने बहुत देर से कहा। नहीं तो पुरानी व्यवस्था क्या है कि आप हर राज्य में अलग अलग टैक्सेस देंगे, हर राज्य के नाके के ऊपर, मतलब लोगों का एस्टिमेट है 15 से 20% तक आपकी कॉस्ट एफिशिएंसी इसी में चली जाती है कि आपका प्रोसेस इतना लंबा था। गुड्स और सर्विसेज की जो सीमलेस ट्रांसफर थी वो नहीं होती।
पेट्रोलियम, रियल एस्टेट ऐसे सेक्टर्स हैं जो कि फिलहाल जीएसटी के पर्व्यू के बाहर हैं। आपके हिसाब से कितना वक्त लगेगा अल्कोहल को, इस प्रोडक्ट को जीएसटी में आने के?
देखिए, जब व्यवस्था एम्पावर्ड कमेटी की चल रही थी, मैं अभी आनंद शर्मा जी का बयान भी आपके चैनल पे सुन रहा था कि उन्होंने कहा कि पेट्रोलियम को क्यों नहीं रखा। वो अपनी कांग्रेस की राज्य सरकारों से पूछें, उनकी हर सरकार ने विरोध किया। तो जैसे मैं वेस्ट बंगाल के संबंध में कह रहा था, तो कांग्रेस पार्टी शुड ऑल्सो हैव वन पोजीशन ऑन जीएसटी। एवरी स्टेट गवर्नमेंट ऑफ द कांग्रेस पार्टी अपोज्ड पेट्रोलियम बीइंग ब्रॉट इनटू द जीएसटी। और उस वक्त एम्पावर्ड कमेटी में यह स्थिति थी कि पेट्रोलियम, अल्कोहल को लेकर कोई भी राज्य मानने को तैयार नहीं थे। हम लोगों ने आग्रह किया कि इसको लेकर आए, और फिर जो कॉम्प्रोमाइज हुआ उसमें यह था कि संविधान संशोधन जो हमने किया उसमें पेट्रोलियम प्रोडक्ट्स को हम ले आए हैं। तो आज जो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन अमेंडमेंट पास हुआ है उसमें पेट्रोलियम इज अ पार्ट ऑफ द जीएसटी, लेकिन अभी वो जीरो रेटेड है। उस पर टैक्स तब लगेगा जबकि जीएसटी काउंसिल तय करेगी। और मुझे लगता है कि जीएसटी काउंसिल में दो विषय आएंगे कभी ना कभी। पहला आएगा रियल एस्टेट का। रियल एस्टेट में जीएसटी में लाने की मैं मानता हूं बहुत जरूरत है। इसलिए जरूरत है कि जीएसटी टैक्स इवेजन होता है तो रियल एस्टेट में होता है, क्योंकि कैश की ट्रांजैक्शंस रियल एस्टेट में रहती हैं। इसलिए हम आंखें बंद कर लें और उस तरफ देखें ना, ये उचित नहीं होगा। तो हमारे जो चीफ इकोनॉमिक एडवाइजर हैं अरविंद सुब्रमण्यम, उन्होंने एक डॉक्यूमेंट तैयार किया था कि इस जो रियल एस्टेट बिजनेस में ब्लैक मनी इकोनॉमी है, इसको समाप्त करने के लिए आप उसको जीएसटी में लाइए। दिल्ली सरकार के जो उप मुख्यमंत्री हैं मनीष सिसोदिया, इन्होंने अरविंद सुब्रमण्यम के उस पॉइंट को लेकर जीएसटी काउंसिल में एक प्रस्ताव रखा कि इसको लाना चाहिए, और मैंने उनके इस प्रस्ताव को सपोर्ट किया। लेकिन सदस्यों का कहना था कि एक बार 1 जुलाई को लागू हो जाए, देयर आफ्टर फर्स्ट ईयर में हम रियल एस्टेट का इशू टेकअप करेंगे। पेट्रोलियम के संबंध में इनपुट्स पे टैक्स जा रहा है, लेकिन आउटपुट पे अभी क्रेडिट नहीं मिल रहा, तो इसलिए उसमें भी उपभोक्ता का नुकसान है न डालने में। तो मुझे लगता है कि कभी ना कभी सूनर और लेटर काउंसिल को इस पे व्यू लेना पड़ेगा। और जहां तक केंद्र सरकार का सवाल है, हम लोग इसके पूरा समर्थन में हैं। यहां प्रवचन करने के स्थान पर अगर आनंद शर्मा कांग्रेस की सरकारों को भी इसको समर्थन में ले आए तो बीजेपी वालों को मैं लाने की कोशिश करूंगा, और फिर निश्चित रूप से।
और शराब, जिससे कई सारी स्टेट गवर्नमेंट को फंडिंग मिलती है,
शराब के बारे में स्टेट्स विल हैव टू कम ऑन बोर्ड एट सम स्टेज, लेकिन आज वो स्थिति नहीं है। राज्य उसके लिए तैयार नहीं हो रहे। अगर राज्य तैयार होते हैं तो हम तो कल तैयार हो जाएंगे उसमें।
जीएसटी का पूरा मकसद था कि टैक्स सरल होगा। कुछ प्रोडक्ट कैटेगरीज में सवाल ऐसे उठे कि अलग अलग सेम प्रोडक्ट में अलग अलग कैटेगरी के लिए टैक्स अलग क्यों है। एपरल का उठा, फुटवेयर का उठा, साथ ही साथ रेस्टोरेंट्स का उठा, कि जहां पे आपने कहा कि एसी रेस्टोरेंट पे टैक्स ज्यादा होगा।
ठीक है, एक इक्विटी होनी चाहिए।
कई सारे रेस्टोरेंट ओनर्स ने कहा कि हमारे यहाँ एसी वाला भी है, नॉन एसी वाला।
ओनर के कहने से हर आदमी सेल्फ सर्विंग बात करेगा। लेट अस बी वेरी क्लियर, जो डायरेक्ट टैक्सेस होते हैं, इनकम टैक्स, वो प्रोग्रेसिव टैक्स है। अमीर आदमी ज्यादा देता है, गरीब आदमी कम देता है। इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स जो होता है वो रिग्रेसिव होता है। रिग्रेसिव इसलिए होता है कि अमीर और गरीब को एक प्रोडक्ट के लिए एक जितना टैक्स देना पड़ता है। मान लीजिए आपने साबुन खरीदा, चाहे अमीर है चाहे गरीब है, साबुन पे ऊपर टैक्स उतना ही आपको देना पड़ेगा। इसलिए इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स में इक्विटी लाने के लिए वो रिग्रेसिव कम हो। जो प्रोडक्ट आम आदमी और गरीब आदमी के हैं उस पे कम टैक्स लगाओ, जो अमीर आदमी के हैं ज्यादा लगाओ, ये उसका नियम है। और जो लोग एक बेतुका तर्क देते थे कि ज्यादा स्लैब क्यों है, तो मैंने एक सीधा तर्क दिया, तो क्या हवाई चप्पल और मर्सिडीज कार के ऊपर एक जैसा टैक्स लगाएं? एक प्रोडक्ट गरीब आदमी इस्तेमाल करता है, एक प्रोडक्ट अमीर आदमी इस्तेमाल करता है, अलग अलग स्लैब होगा। तो सिंगल स्लैब आज हिंदुस्तान में संभव नहीं है। वो डेवलप्ड सोसाइटीज में हो सकता है जहां गरीब नहीं।
कल हम चिदम्बरम साहब से बात कर रहे थे,
उसको कंप्लीट कर दूं आपके उदाहरण के। आपने अपैरल और शूज का कहा, तो जो कपड़ा गरीब आदमी भी पहनता है और कपड़ा आपको 1 लाख रुपए का भी एक गारमेंट मिल सकता है, तो इसलिए उसकी टैक्सेशन लेवल में डिफरेंट होगा। तो इसलिए कपड़े और जूते के संबंध में 1000 रुपए से कम का होगा तो उस पर एक टैक्स होगा, और कपड़े के संबंध में और 1000 से ज्यादा का होगा तो उस पर दूसरा टैक्स होगा। तो ये इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स में इक्विटी लाने की आवश्यकता होती है। अगर इक्विटी नहीं लाओगे तो अमीर और गरीब के प्रोडक्ट को आप एट पार रख दोगे तो वो किसी भी लोकतंत्र में कोई इक्विटेबल नहीं होगा। मुझे पास आजकल कुछ समय के लिए डिफेंस की जिम्मेवारी है। सेना के लोग आकर हमें लिस्ट देते हैं कि ये वाली चीजें खरीदनी है, और सरकारों के पास साधन नहीं है। तो आपको देश चलाने के लिए गांव में आपको अगर पक्के घर बनाने हैं, बिजली देनी है, सड़कें देनी है, शौचालय देने हैं, आपका हेल्थ केयर, आप बजट के टाइम पर जो प्रवचन करते हो कि हेल्थ केयर पे और एजुकेशन पे खर्चा नहीं हो रहा, तो कम से कम जो टैक्स नॉन कंप्लायंट कैरेक्टर है हिंदुस्तान का, उसको समाप्त करना पड़ेगा।
कुछ आंकलन आपने किया है कि जो इस वक्त टैक्स नहीं देते हैं, चोरी करते हैं?
मैंने आपको बजट में मैंने एक आंकड़ा दिया था डायरेक्ट टैक्स का। मैं दोनों डायरेक्ट और इनडायरेक्ट का आपको बताऊं। हम 130 करोड़ का देश हैं। 5 लाख से कम 2.5 लाख तक तो टैक्स है नहीं, और उसके बाद आपको डिडक्शन वगैरह लेके बहुत मार्जिनल देना पड़ता है। 5 लाख से ज्यादा इनकम टैक्स देने वाले लोग इस देश में, 130 करोड़ के देश में 78 लाख लोग हैं, और उस 78 में से 61 लाख लोग वो हैं जो सैलरीड हैं। आपको जो वेतन मिलता होगा उसमें आपका टैक्स कट जाता है। तो सैलरीड एम्प्लॉइज छोड़ दो प्राइवेट और सरकार के, तो उसके अलावा 5 लाख से ज्यादा इनकम डिस्क्लोज करने वाले कितने? 17 लाख लोग बचे 130 करोड़ के देश में। अब आप इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेस पे आ जाओ। जीएसटी में हम लोग 17 टैक्सेस को सबस्यूम कर रहे हैं। 23 सेसेस और 17 टैक्स जो अबॉलिश होंगे, और एक जीएसटी आएगा। इसमें 3 प्रमुख हैं, एक्साइज, वैट, सर्विस टैक्स। ये तीनों में जो लोगों ने रजिस्टर करवाया हुआ है, जो तीनों में से थोड़ा बहुत देते होंगे, ये टोटल संख्या देश में 80 लाख लोगों की है बस। और उस 80 लाख में से द होल यूनिवर्स, जिसमें वकील भी शामिल है, डॉक्टर भी शामिल है, चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट, आर्किटेक्ट, बिजनेसमैन, व्यापारी, ट्रेडर, सब शामिल है। ये आपकी टैक्स बेस है। तो इसलिए, और इसमें से 80 लाख में से वो लोग भी हैं जो एक्साइज में भी रजिस्टर्ड है, वैट में भी हैं, तो कई नाम डुप्लीकेट होंगे। तो इस एक्चुअल संख्या न्यूमेरिकल फिजिकल इंडिविजुअल्स की ली जाए या एंटिटीज की, तो और कम हो जाएगी। तो इसलिए कनाडा और ऑस्ट्रेलिया के साथ जो ब्लाइंडली हम कंपेयर कर लेते हैं, आपको पहले स्टेप में हिंदुस्तान को एक टैक्स कंप्लायंट सोसाइटी बनाना है।
80 लाख का आंकड़ा कहां तक पहुंच सकता है आपके अनुमान में जीएसटी?
देखिए, मैं इस पे कोई स्पेक्युलेट नहीं करूंगा। ये जो आपने कहा तैयारी हो चुकी है, तो अब जो रजिस्ट्रेशन शुरू हुआ, अब क्या व्यवस्था है कि कल मैंने जो इन्होंने सॉफ्टवेयर वगैरह बनाए हैं, ये जीएसटीएन वाले शायद मुझसे बेहतर बता पाए आपको, उसके तहत एक ज्यादा एफिशिएंट टैक्स सिस्टम होने की वजह से, जब टैक्स सिस्टम ज्यादा एफिशिएंट होता है तो उसमें आपका बेस बढ़ता है, इवेजन पकड़ने की गुंजाइश भी ज्यादा रहती है। और जब बेस बढ़ता है तो फिर रेट्स को रीजनेबल करने की क्षमता भी बढ़ती है। तो जीएसटीएन में आगे चल के जीएसटी में क्या होगा, जैसे अलग स्लैब हैं, हमारे 2 स्टैंडर्ड रेट हैं, 12% और 18%। क्या ये दोनों कभी कन्वर्ज करके एक बन जाएंगे? ये पहली संभावना है, निश्चित रूप से बन सकते हैं। दूसरा, अगर आपका बेस बढ़ता है तो क्या फिर रेट्स को कम किया जा सकता है? और उसकी भी गुंजाइश इसलिए बढ़ती है कि नॉन कंप्लायंट सोसाइटी में जो कंप्लायंट टैक्स पेयर है, जो टैक्स देता है, वो बेचारा अपने हिस्से का भी दे रहा है, और जो नहीं दे रहा उसके हिस्से का भी दे रहा है, क्योंकि देश चलाने के लिए तो साधन चाहिए। तो इसलिए फिर रेट्स को और रीजनेबल करने की गुंजाइश बढ़ती है। तो इसलिए मुझे लगता है कि एक बार ये व्यवस्था बन जाए, स्वाभाविक है कि आरंभ में थोड़ी सी कठिनाई लोगों को, एक नई व्यवस्था में हम लोग जा रहे हैं, टेक्नोलॉजी में ग्लिचेस हो सकते हैं। तो आपने कहा कि रिफंड में कभी एक आध महीने, तो इसलिए पहले 2 महीने के लिए हमने काफी लैक्सिटी दी है। पहले कुछ महीनों के लिए कोई रूल्स बहुत सख्ती से लागू हो, उस पर पेनल्टी लगाई जाए, ये करे, ऐसा नहीं विभाग करने वाला। कारण ये है कि लोगों को नया अभ्यास आ रहा है, लोग एक नई व्यवस्था में जा रहे हैं, और जब एक बार चले जाएंगे तो सरल कितना है कि मान लीजिए मैं सामान कस्टमर को बेचता हूं, तो मुझे एक सॉफ्टवेयर पे रजिस्ट्रेशन लेना है और हर 10 तारीख से पहले पिछले महीने की अपना टोटल सेल डाल देती है। That's all I have to do.
My colleague Kamaljeet Sandhu, who tracks the Ministry of Home Affairs for India today, has been able to access a note put together by the National Investigation Agency, which lays out specific details about the amount of money received by separatist leaders in the Kashmir Valley. Also, interestingly, how much of the money they kept for themselves, supposedly as a kickback of sorts, and how much was pumped into fueling separatism. For the first time, specific details emerging about how much money was paid to the Hurriyat terrorists and on what dates. This is a big India Today follow-up.
The self-styled representatives of Kashmir, Sayyid Ali Shah Gilani, founder of Tehreek-e-Hurriyat, Yasin Malik, chairman, Jammu and Kashmir Liberation Front, Shabbir Shah, founder, Jammu and Kashmir Democratic Freedom Party, and Naeem Khan, the separatist leader stung by India Today. Exposed yet again as the real villains of the valley. The final nail in their coffin, NIA's top secret note that reveals their complete terror funding trail. In 2011, 4 men, Ghulam Mohammad Bhatt, Mohammad Sadiq Ganai, Ghulam Jilani Lilu and Mohammad Farooq Daga were put behind bars, charge-sheeted for allegedly taking funds from Pakistan. Where did the funds go? According to the NIA, the funds went to those championing Pakistan's cause in India. In November 2009, Naeem Khan received 5 lakh rupees from Mohammad Farooq Daga, the man charge-sheeted by NIA. In March 2010, he received 10 lakh rupees and another 10 lakh rupees each in May and September 2010. On May 16, India Today caught Naeem Khan on camera admitting that Pakistan funded unrest in the Kashmir Valley.
Financial support raised for him, President William.
President में रहा, but this level का होना चाहिए.
फिर भी
जिस level का मैंने
100 crores तो रहा होगा.
The India Today sting clearly showing its impact in the internal note accessed by India Today. This note belongs to the NI. On page 8 is mentioned how India Today stung Naeem Khan, and there has been a revelations of his account.
Similar amounts were transferred by these charge-sheeted men to Sayyid Ali Shah Gilani, Yasin Malik and Shabbir Shah. Is this the support Hizbul Mujahideen terror boss Sayyid Salahuddin, recently labelled a global terrorist by the United States, boasts of?
We've also been told if there is going to be some action, it is perhaps going to be after July 15th, once the Burhan Wani week is over. So clearly, NI gathering more steam, the investigation gathering more steam, and more revelations are about to come out. With camera person Anurag Saxena, this is Kamaljeet Sandhu in Delhi for India Today.
This is one investigation that is simply refusing to die down, in carrying on with huge momentum, quite unprecedented this. Good work by our investigative agencies. The key, of course, is to be able to nail it in a court so that these Hurriyat terrorists have to pay, but after the proper course of law being allowed to play itself out. This is where we wrap up the newsroom tonight. I look forward to seeing you at 10 p.m. tomorrow evening with another action.